Hello, everyone, and welcome to a series I think I want to call Subject Subsets. I personally have a lot to talk about, so I figured I'd get some suggestions from my friends and viewers and give my thoughts on it. If you like this format, feel free to let me know in the comments or the Discord, and I'll make sure to make more of these. The first suggestion comes from my friend Chase, who said something to the effect of, how about you just talk about food? So, I'm just going to talk about food. Thank you, Chase. Now, my first thought when I think about food is, of course, my own personal experience with it. For all of middle school and high school, some of college, and honestly, even still some today, I've honestly really struggled with food. When I was a kid, I was bigger, and I started gaining a lot of weight in second grade and really didn't slow down until the 8th. I ended up, I think at my heaviest, about 200 or 205 at 5'11". In retrospect, it's pretty obvious why it happened. I had really insane eating habits. Every day, I'd bring a sweet tea to school and drink it in the morning along with my water bottle. I ate homemade pizza every day for lunch. And, bundled into all of that, I never really had a love for sports as a kid. To me, they mostly seemed boring. At the time, if I'm thinking back, I did the swim team, and that was fun and definitely, helped. But in combination with the eating habits, that weight wasn't going anywhere. Today, I love basically all sports, but that's a totally different thing. And that definitely helped me in high school to lose the weight and shed the pounds because I was just generally more active, kind of like I am today. It's more fun to me to be active, which I guess that also just comes with losing weight in general. But anyway, that's a side thing. So by about 8th grade, that struggle with my weight had honestly led me to a pretty dark place. Now that was 7th grade, honestly, that started. But 8th grade is whenever I really started to notice it. A lot of issues with even placing a sense of worth on myself. I found how I looked and how I felt repulsive and disgusting. So to cope with that, when I wasn't at my house, I just stopped eating fully. I heard something about intermittent fasting, and I figured I could do that at school. So I'd go to school and make sure that I just ate nothing for the day. And then when I got home, I'd supplement with whatever my mom made. And honestly, if I remember correctly, it worked a little bit. Kind of hard, because at that time I wasn't tracking stuff. Then on top of all that, I had my perfectionism with my grades, which I still have to deal with, and puberty starting. So, all in all, I was having a pretty rough time. But regardless of its efficacy, what it really did was take a toll on my own mental well-being. Outside of my first semester at college, I don't know if I've ever had a worse mental state than when I was in middle school. Then the second semester of 8th grade, quarantine hit, like a damn freight train. I remember we went home for spring break and just never came back. It was seriously the strangest feeling. Actually, that was also about the time that I got really obsessed with Geometry Dash, which I think I might end up making a video about eventually. In short, Geometry Dash is about my most played game of all time at this point, and it's because of quarantine. A lot of good times looking back then. On top of everything else, I was locked in my house with basically nothing to do and only one ply toilet paper that we could get off a pallet from a supplier we knew. And I think that could and did drive almost everyone crazy. Being at home, at least to my understanding, I couldn't really refuse to eat for half the day either. So I really felt stuck with where I was. But then, and I don't remember the exact day, but a big change happened. If I remember correctly, I think it was David Goggins that did it for me.
Tape record myself. That internal voice I put on tape. Sound like a straight bitch when I listen to that motherfucker.
I watched some interview that he had or one of the videos that he uploaded at the time, and I really started to want to get fit. So I started doing push-ups every day. My first goal was 100 a day, and I mean at the time I could barely do 10. But slowly I started to gain some muscle and lose fat. And really, I felt good about myself. I also began to pick up running, which I still do today. And seriously, if I can recommend any one thing to anyone to pick up, it is running. It is one of the best decisions I've ever made. It is so great for your mental and your physical well-being. I genuinely just can't recommend it enough. During this time, I still didn't even really have a good grasp on what healthy eating looked like. We all still ate fast food a ton in my house, and me personally, I was particularly partial to Zaxby's during the quarantine. I remember I'd go out and I'd get a 5-finger meal with like a mountain of fries and a big ass sweet tea. And I mean, it seriously may be one of the most unhealthy things I've ever eaten, but damn, it was really good. Eventually, I got that idea of what health eating was supposed to look like, and even started to track my food on this old dead app called MyPlate. Eventually, I ended up swapping to this app that I use now called Chronometer. So, by the way, if you're ever looking to track your food, that's the one that I recommend. MyFitnessPal is a fucking scam. That's where stuff kind of started to take a turn, though. Sure, all this was great for me at the time, especially like physically. But when I got started back at school, I only really upped the intensity. My push-up goal steadily rose from 100 to 200, 300, up to 500, and even 1,000 at one point. I continued to eat less and less food, and all that was bundled with this increasing intense anxiety that if I stopped, I would backslide to how I was before. It got to the point that at my lowest, it was at 155 pounds at 6'2", which, I mean, if you don't know, that's like on the border of underweight. I just obsessed over my dieting every day like crazy. And it wasn't even necessarily like calorie count. It was macros. It was sugar. It was different ingredients that were, carcinogens. So I wouldn't eat bacon. I wouldn't eat sausage. I wouldn't eat candy, anything like that. And I started the habit of reading every ingredient on the ingredients label of the stuff that I eat. Difference at the time from now being that if there was one thing that I thought wouldn't benefit me health-wise, I would refuse to even fucking eat it. And so for basically all high school, that's what I did. By about junior or senior year, push-ups every day had turned into the gym 5 or even 6 days a week for upwards of 3 hours at a time. I even remember I broke my foot and I had a cast on my leg. And I went to the gym with that cast on my leg for leg day. Whenever there was football practice, whenever I joined the football team during junior year, since I couldn't practice, I would use my crutches to go around the field over and over and over again for exercise because I felt horrible not being able to practice and not being able to move and exercise as much as I wanted to. And keep in mind, this was still in conjunction with going to the gym for on average upwards of 25 hours a week. And I had just become incredibly paranoid and anxious about my eating. I mean, I remember in senior year of high school, my girlfriend at the time, she did a really sweet thing and made me some stuff for breakfast. I believe it was a breakfast casserole. And I almost wouldn't eat it because it had bacon in it. And bacon isn't even that bad for you whenever you're, 18 or 17. I just perceived it as being unhealthy. And because of that perception, I wouldn't let myself eat more than a few bites of it to make her happy. And I felt horrible about it. I could see that it made her feel bad. But at the same time, I couldn't help it. My personal experience of anxiety was so extreme with my food intake that for me to eat more of it, I was horrified that I would end up right back where I was 4 years ago in middle school, even though that was, patently ridiculous, to be honest. And then freshman year of college, that rolled over into the first semester. And a lot happened that first semester for me, which I can talk about eventually. But to make a long story short, I ended up getting on a anxiety medication and having a lot of side effects that came about because of it. And when I got off, my anxiety was actually significantly better. And so from there on, my anxiety had become significantly muted, though I still, even today, about a year and a half removed from that point in my life, track my food every day, track everything that I eat, track my macros, my calories, and though it's mostly a subconscious process at this point, I still imagine that it does have an effect on me. And even today, if I find something to be not very healthy, I just don't eat it. I haven't had a cookie or something baked like that in ages. I have only had candy to up my blood sugar whenever I've had issues like staying awake during school because of a low caloric intake. And that's another thing. I still eat healthy, and being in college and eating healthy is very difficult, as you might have surmised from hearing other people. Thankfully, or regrettably, because of my time in high school and middle school obsessing over what I ate, I'm very well adjusted to the feeling of hunger now, so I can eat healthily. However, because I eat healthily at school, they tend to give serving sizes the same size as the unhealthy foods, which the unhealthy foods are significantly more calorically dense. So on a typical day, it usually lead to about 400-ish calories under maintenance, and that led to me over the course of the semester losing about 15 pounds. And it wasn't conscious, it was just a result of me eating healthily in college. When you get busy, you just can't really take out the time to try to make up that difference. That's why, to me, portion sizes in college are so important. And I really think the portion sizes that they give out should probably be determined based on calories and not necessarily grams or however they do it now. Specifically for people like me that require a lot of calories just to live, but can't really bring themselves to eat unhealthily. But anyway, that's a basic summary of my own experience with eating. Now that brings me to the wider world of eating today. My story, whenever I had it, seemed kind of unusual, but increasingly, it seems to me less and less unusual today in America and across the wider internet as a whole. I personally, in real life, know many people who have previously had or currently have genuine diagnosed eating disorders, as well as people with stories much like my own who found an obsession in the perceived health of their food. And judging from my experience, it's interesting for me to think about where that may come from, at least for men. I think there's also a certain distinction between the eating disorders that come about for men and women, in that it seems like specifically the uptick among men has been quite isolated to this decade, at least to my perception. Especially today, now that governments are trying to install age verification into every facet of the internet. What's really crazy to me is that none of my mental problems actually came from those like quote unquote bad sources. I never watched guys that were natty until I was well above the point at which I could tell from just a first glance. And all the advice given to me was of quality without a hint of like money-seeking behavior. Again, like David Goggins, I've found the man to be an inspiration, but I've never bought a course from him, never bought a book. I just watched him and got inspiration from the way in which he carried himself. Which, yeah, it's a little cornball-y and goofy, but it was very good to me at the time to see someone that went through a similar experience as I was trying to go through. And I think in that way, at least as far as I can speak to the male experience of insecurity across the internet, I find many of the emotions related to it come about unconsciously from various points of exposure, and not just the internet. I know a big one for me was probably movies, and without thinking, I was comparing myself to actors who didn't have that typically super roided physique, but even still definitely required medical intervention to achieve the heights that they achieved. Specifically thinking back, I think of like Steve Rogers from the first Captain America. Whenever he becomes that super soldier, like super built body, I remember as a kid, I thought that was realistic for me to do. And I really, really felt bad about myself for not being able to get there at, I don't know, 13. And looking around, I think those kinds of exposures where you go into something for something and you're exposed to that idea of like the ideal male physique is what ends up throwing so many men down this rabbit hole of trying to be as attractive as they possibly can. And to that effect, trying to eat in a way that makes them feel more secure and attracted. Because it seems like to me as a man today, it's so common to be openly insecure in your masculinity, in your ability to achieve great things, to survive even today with the way that the economy's going. And where even a decade ago, it was superhero movie stars doing the heavy lifting for insecurity. Now, to my eye, it's streamers where you see highlights show up, and unconsciously, as a young man of like 14 or 15, you see their physique and compare yours to that, and then naturally, depending on what side of the internet you're on, you become insecure. And it's fascinating to me because hopefully now that I'm on the other side of my own struggle, I can see people around me being drawn in to what the current insecurity driver is. It's almost like a drug. And I think that's also tied to the allure of the far right currently in young men. The right has really captured this manosphere throughout the internet and brought out many dormant qualities that men are raised with, like sexism, racism, and the idea of a certain type of manliness, and making them explicit and virtuous. Men become emboldened by these idols to do things like using disgusting terms to refer to women, or explicitly supporting far-right ideology as they view it to be a manly ideal. And in that, they supplant their insecurity with ideology and their anxiety with practice. I especially see that as a driver for the increasing use of steroid usage among young men that I feel like I'm seeing around me. It seems like a lot of men have been drawn towards medical supplements in order to achieve the physique that they want. Because now it's hardly a secret that so many of these people do steroids that you see on TV or online. And so many young men simply do not care about the health detriments that steroids bring in comparison with the physique that they can provide and alleviate their own insecurities and anxieties. Frankly, I almost find it disgusting about the draw towards steroid use, not necessarily the men using steroids. It's like a siren song towards pharmacology and shortened lifespan. And at this point, many young men do it not even for the sake of what historically many young men have done it for, which is the female gaze or the male gaze, depending upon their particular sexual leanings. But instead, they do it for the sake of their own security in their body, where they constantly compare themselves to people around them. And when they feel inferior to them on behalf of their physique, on behalf of their eating habits, on behalf of their lifestyle choices, they feel the need to supplement that. And no cost is too high for that. A shortened lifespan isn't too high for that. A shortened health span certainly isn't too high for that. Many of these men know that getting on these steroids, that eating in the way that they do, that using methamphetamines, all of this will lead to their eventual detriment as an older man. But instead, what they care the most about currently is perceiving themselves as worth something. And in order to achieve that worth, they believe that they need supplements. So in a way, I'm thankful that I went through that period in my life before that really became the dominant philosophy among fitness influencers, or at least that I found a certain group of fitness advice that strayed away from the supplementary angle. And all that put together, I think that eventually obsessing over eating, over supplements, over working out, over things that are typically associated with being healthy, it leads to a spiral of stress and anxiety, much like obsessing over anything would, which, let me tell you from experience, is infinitely less healthy for you than a single damn burger. So, as a young man, what can you do? And, well, listening to my mom, she says, moderation is king. If you want some candy sometime, or soda, or anything like that, just make sure it's rare and look at it like a treat or a dessert. If you want something regular to eat, generally make it healthy, whole foods. Every now and then have something to break the mundanity. Make sure that you work out 3 or 4 times a week, probably, in whichever way makes you most fulfilled. You don't necessarily need to go to the gym. Just make sure that you're up and moving at some point. And above all, make sure that you don't associate guilt with eating. It just leads you to a spiral of anxiety and eventually, sadly, depression. And the last bit of advice that I can give as a similarly unexperienced 19-year-old is to just get off social media. It exponentially increases the exposure that the layman gets to a place of immense dissatisfaction with their own body. If you can just disconnect from it all and most other sources of comparison, or at least try to mentally compartmentalize them in a way where you don't find yourself subconsciously comparing yourself to them. And that's specifically for things like movies and TV and YouTube. If you are to do that with social media, I would argue that to be impossible, inherently because of the nigh subconscious aspect of scrolling. And whenever you're able to disconnect from that dissatisfaction, you're able to find joy in simple progression towards the goal instead of in the goal itself, which I find to be the number one factor in what makes someone's fitness journey satisfying as opposed to anxiety inducing. In that way, I also find it to be immensely gratifying in my own experience to pick up some form of meditation. A lot of obsessions with anything stem from not allowing your brain the time or space to think through the practical effects of that obsession upon you. If you can really take the time to meditate over what it is that's important and should be important to you, It makes it much harder to obsess over something as trivial as the perceived health of food, or your appearance, or the amount of time you've had in the gym, or your grades, or anything like that that ultimately does not matter that much. And look, meditation doesn't have to come in the form of sitting cross-legged on your floor while you simply try to think of nothing. It can come in the form of running, which is what I would recommend, but I'm also biased. It can come in the form of other types of exercise. It can come in the form of simple chores around your house. Anything where you are undistracted from your thoughts and you allow yourself almost to be bored, that counts as meditation. And I really think combining that with detachment from the social media driven ecosystem that we live in today on the internet really will help a lot of young men to avoid some of the mistakes that I made and the many mistakes that many people are making today. But anyways, that's the subset of that subject that I think I'm going to talk about today. Once again, if you want to see more, feel free to like the video or comment on it with suggestions. Or even feel free to join the Discord server from the link in the description and put it in the video suggestions channel there. I read those every day and I take suggestions from there and from what my friends tell me and try to make them into videos. I also stream Mondays, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays at 5 on Twitch and now on YouTube as well. Feel free to drop in. Right now I'm going through my 500 game Steam library and finishing all of the ones I haven't played yet. You can also vote on which game is next in the Discord server, since I have a channel for that. The next few streams will be in Dark Souls 3, so if you want to drop in to see me die to the Curse Rod of Greatwood a million times and rage and throw my controller across the room, feel free. And yeah, see y'all in the next video. Later.